They may look skinny, but inside there's a lot of fat. And so we want to know that, because if we say, oh, you're skinny, you're healthy, that's the same person who could just drop dead from a heart attack in a month, too.
Hello, Thrive State community, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State podcast. Your host, Dr. V here, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. And today I'm super excited to bring on this guest. Not only is he a really good friend of mine and we work on celebrity clients together as a team, he is also one of the most sought after integrative medicine and functional gastroenterology doctors in the country. If you are new to this podcast, if you're new to the show, this is a show that really allows us to elevate all areas of our life, including our health and wellness, our financial, our mindsets, all of these things, so that we could become better versions of ourselves, so that we could serve other people, including our families, our friends, our businesses, and our communities in the next level. So if you're new to this podcast, please subscribe to the podcast, interact with us by leaving a comment. And if this content is really allowing you to take your life to the next level, please share it with your friends and family, and consider leaving us a review at ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. And if you are a loyal listener to the podcast, thank you so much for being a part of this journey, for allowing our podcast to grow. It has really been a treat to lead this podcast and give you guys great guests every week. I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for allowing this thing to, get to the level it's at right now. Now, today's guest, like I told you before, is a good friend of mine. He was actually introduced to me because he does a lot of speaking for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. It's an organization that I'm a part of as well. I'll be actually moderating this year's World Congress, as well as giving a keynote presentation there. So he's one of these guys that are basically in the midst of, healthcare revolution. This guy is really practicing the next level of medicine, and I want you to get to know him, and I want you to get to know his book. You should all pick up a copy. It is Rescue Your Health. It recently came out, one of the best books that are out there. You'll get to learn about all the advances there is in health, and he explains it in a way for you to really just understand at a level, no matter if you are a healthcare person or not. His name is Dr. Marvin Singh. He's the founder of Precision Clinic and one of the few integrative gastroenterologists in the United States. After graduating from Virginia Commonwealth University School of Medicine, he went on to do his internal medicine training at the University of Michigan Hospitals. He then went on to do his gastroenterology hepatology fellowship at Scripps Torrey Pines, really close to where I did medical school at UCSD. He went on to fulfill a fellowship in integrative medicine and was trained by Dr. Andrew Weil, really big wig in integrative medicine, at the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Singh is currently a diplomate and member of the American Board of Integrative Medicine and first director of Integrative Gastroenterology at the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute at the University of California Irvine. Like me, he's a faculty member at UCLA and the Johns Hopkins University. He is the author of a brand new book that I suggest you guys all pick up. It's called Rescue Your Health, and has co-edited the textbook of Integrative Gastroenterology, the second edition. He has been featured on Forbes, ABC News, Reader Digest, Mind Body Green, Sirius XM Radio, and many other platforms. He is also the host of his own podcast, Precision, the Healthcast, and currently serves as the health advisor for Bottomless Closet in NYC, an organization that helps women in need. He lives in San Diego, California, with his wife and 2 children. He's loads of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Dr. Marvin Singh. Marvin Singh, welcome to the Thrive State podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I am super excited. I'm glad, and I'm really super excited for the Thrive State community to get to know you. But before we get into the interview, before we get started, 5 to Thrive, people are accustomed to knowing the talk before the talk, or the 5 questions that are going to get the conversation lubricated, so to speak. So here we go. 1,000 points each, but the points mean nothing. Question number one for you. What was your favorite activity as a child?
Oh, favorite activity as a child. Let's see. I loved playing tennis. That was my favorite. That was my favorite sport. And I used to play baseball before that, but then I fell in love with tennis. So going and playing tennis on the weekends or after school was probably my favorite activity, I'd say.
Tennis. Okay. Give you 1,000 points for that one. Number two was the greatest challenge you had to overcome and the wisdom it gave you thereafter.
Child or as an adult or anytime, doesn't matter.
Anytime.
You know, the biggest challenge I had to overcome so far, I guess, my professional career is figuring out how to do what is passionate to me within the field of gastroenterology, because it's very conservative, in general, conservative field. And it's tough to do integrative medicine as a gastroenterologist. So I figured out how to do that, and I started a precision clinic. So I run 2 practices. Actually, 3 practices.
Yeah, I know what that's like. All right. Question number 3 is your favorite movie.
Oh, man. Let's see. Favorite movie. There's so many movies. That's a tough one, as we love watching movies. Let's see. I can't think of one right off the top of my head. Let me think for a second. We'll get back to you on that.
Okay. Well, we'll finish on that one there. Question number 4 is, few people know this fact about you that you're willing to share right now.
Few people know that I'm from a rural part of Virginia, actually.
Oh, okay. All right.
I live here in San Diego, but I grew up in Winchester, Virginia. I that's where I was born and grew up for the first early years of my life, and then we moved to Washington D.C. area. But I grew up in Winchester, out with the cows.
Oh, beautiful. And that's where your parents are now?
No, my parents are in, actually they migrated to Rockville area.
Oh, okay. Rockville, Maryland.
Rockville, Maryland. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I Rockville was really, really close. I lived inside the confines of the NIH for a year. Yeah. I was in the Howard Hughes Medical Institute Cloister program. And there was a building in the NIH called the Cloister, where a bunch of nuns used to live. And I did some research at the NIH there, and Rockville was the neighboring city. So I know the area well. Cool. Question number 5. And don't forget, I still remember that we still need to get back to question number 3. But question number 5 is, how would you like to be remembered, Marvin?
I would like to be remembered as somebody who didn't just accept the status quo, that didn't just say, okay. Somebody that thought outside the box, that tried to figure out solutions for people where others couldn't come up with solutions or didn't think that there was a solution even possible. I guess that would be kind of the legacy that I would like to leave behind. That's kind of the purpose of my work and what I'm doing these days, is to help people think outside the box.
Oh, beautiful. My first question after these 5 to thrive, I'm going to take from that answer there, but don't think I forgot. What is your favorite movie, Marvin Singh?
So I like all kinds of movies, but if you know me well, you know I kind of like the superhero type of movies or the sci-fi type of movies. And I would say The Avengers is probably one of my favorite movies. I like these superhero movies.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites that just came out, also a Marvel movie that I starred in, Shang-Chi. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that. Is that just, is that one that just came out?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's actually Shang-Chi, but people think that I'm in that movie. All right, well, awesome. 5 to thrive, 5,000 points. That means I buy you dinner the next time I see you. But so great. I love the fact that you mentioned, you thinking outside the box, which gives me a sense of what your answer is. But, like myself, you are a conventionally trained MD, medical doctor, and in a field of gastroenterology, which is a very, highly sought after field. I would say very competitive field to get into. And most gastroenterologists do very, very well from a financial standpoint. Again, one of these specialties that a lot of people go into. So the question is, maybe like myself, why go outside of that gastroenterology box? Why did you pursue integrative medicine after you were fellowship trained in gastroenterology? Why pursue these additional training in integrative medicine?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that all gastroenterologists are compensated well. So that's point number one. But outside of that, it's really not about the money at the end of the day. When I was in sixth grade, we had our graduation theme, and the graduation theme was, "What are your hopes and dreams?" And I remember, we had to draw our silhouette and write on the bottom, "My hopes and dreams are ... And I put to be a doctor, even at that young age. So from a very young age, I wanted to help people, to help people feel better, to live longer, to be healthier. And that's what it's really all about. I mean, if you work hard in any job, you're going to make money. But, here it's that sense of fulfillment, of actually accomplishing what you wanted to do. And when I started my career as a gastroenterologist, said, okay, this is great. We get to help people. I get to save people's lives if they're bleeding in the hospital, for example. But I didn't have that feeling yet. I felt like something was still missing. So I kind of even questioned myself, like, was being a doctor really the right thing? Maybe I should have been a firefighter or something like that, like, I don't know, like what's missing? Because a lot of people keep coming in and out over and over again, going from doctor to doctor to doctor, seeking out how to get the help that they want. And why can't we deliver that? Why can't we deliver that? And then I discovered integrative medicine and Dr. Weil, and I did the fellowship in integrative medicine. I said, if I'm going to learn about this, I want to learn about it the right way with the right people. Yeah. And became board certified in the field. And that really changed my life. It opened my eyes. I tell people it was like a breath of fresh air was blown right into my body, because now I felt like I could see what were some of the missing pieces were to how we even approach taking care of somebody. And that's really the moment where it was like an inflection point. I went from being a doctor to being a healer. And some may think that it's the same, but it's really not the same. And that's how I kind of got to where I am today.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. Was there, I know for me, it was, interventional radiology, a lot of training in interventional radiology, but I had my own health scare. I became overweight, diabetic, hypertensive on prescription medications. And I realized I wasn't given the tools to be healthy in medical school. You would think that the doctors would know how to do that. That's not the case. Did you have a similar sort of personal bout with health that made you go into integrative medicine?
Yeah. I mean, and, I don't know if you ask yourself and reflect back in those early days of your career, did you consider yourself to be unhealthy necessarily? I think a lot of us doctors don't necessarily even think we're unhealthy. It's almost like we're fooling ourselves. Well, I'm a doctor, so I'm not going to be the one to have a heart attack. That kind of thing. But I was 200 some pounds, early on, and I had elevated liver enzymes. My triglycerides were like in the 300s levels. I had fatty liver. My liver enzymes were elevated as a result of the fatty liver, and I had heartburn all the time. And so I guess I really wasn't healthy. And when I started doing a lot of these things and approaching, these things that I was learning methodically, even by making some very simple changes, you could see, in my own health that things started changing very fast. So it's really amazing that, the human body, once you start giving it the ingredients that it wants to do the job that it was meant to do, it'll give you back what you really expect.
That's a really great point. And that's something I share with my listeners all the time as well. I mean, once I kind of figured out that it's how we live our lives controls a major chunk of our biology, I reversed my conditions in like 4 to 6 months. And so anybody listening that happen to have symptoms now, know that there is an answer, and know that there are probably doctors like Dr. Marvin Singh here, who's been trained to look at you from a holistic perspective. And if you're not getting the answers from your physician here, look into people like Dr. Marvin Singh and other functional or integrative physicians who might have the answer for you. So of the When you first started to kind of notice changes in yourself, what would you say was those initial best practices that you thought was like mind-blowing? I mean, I didn't recognize how quickly, if I changed my nutrition, my health would be better. Now, was there nutrition? Was it meditation? I mean, what were those things when you initially applied? Say, oh my God, like this stuff really works.
That's a great question. And, it doesn't take a lot of big moves actually to do this. And you mentioned 4 to 6 months. And I also, when I give lectures, I'll put up a picture of myself from 2015, I think, or 2014 and 2000, like 2 years later, 2017. And I show the before and I show the after. And I tell people that it may look like several years elapsed and it took several years for me to get from point A to point B, but actually point A to point B happened in 3 months. And what happened over those 2 years is that I learned about how to do it. So majority of the time was in learning about doing it. But once you actually start doing it, stopping the, Coke Zero at lunchtime and the bag of chips and the sandwich and replacing it for a big salad. Geez, that was 10 pounds right there, 10 pounds. And, and then you start working in going for a walk in between patients or at lunchtime. So, instead of sitting there on your phone in your little office from 12 to 1 while you eat your lunch, eat your lunch in 20, 30 minutes and then make laps around the building, get an opportunity to just move your legs a little bit instead of sitting around all day. And then I probably lost, 15, 20 pounds over a couple of months, making these changes and starting to, I didn't put any pressure on myself to do 100 things at one time. I said, we're going to make small changes. So we made a change in the lunch. And then at breakfast, I started having steel cut oatmeal with like walnuts and blueberries and ground flax and cinnamon and those kind of things with green tea instead of, green tea instead of coffee with a disgusting creamer in it. Like we didn't know these things back then in those days, really in my early days, I guess. That those are bad for you. I don't even remember the name of that brand of that creamer, but I can see the bottle.
International Delight was mine. Is it the same one?
That's
one
of
6 or 7 pumps in each cup of coffee.
So, so things like that. And then I did reach a plateau. So truthfully, I like around, 20 pounds or so, it's like I couldn't go any further. And I felt like there was more that I could do. So then I pulled some other tools out of my integrative toolbox that I was learning. And this is like while I was actively learning about integrative medicine. And I started really pushing meditation. I started with breath work because just going from no practice to like some, complicated meditative practice is hard for anybody to do.
Sure.
So I started with that, listening to guided meditations and started integrating that into my regular routine. I found that I also slept better, when I did this, especially in the evenings. And I don't know, it was like another switch just got turned on and I lost another 10, 15 pounds just from that.
Absolutely. I mean, what an important point there, because, chronic stress drives these physiological processes that increase inflammation, increase cortisol. And hell, if you're trying to lose weight and you've got elevated cortisol, well, good luck with that. So, I mean, and because inflammation is really, at the core of so many, chronic inflammatory processes in our body, you get a better control of that. You're gonna really, increase your results. So let me ask you, in medical school, both you and I were really trained to be able to look at symptoms and then, think of all these different ways, we would label these symptoms and give them a diagnosis and then give them a very kind of cookie cutter prescription way of treating this patient. And we know that doesn't really work. And a lot of times that ends up being Band-Aids. Why is personalized medicine so important?
Because we're not applying general concepts of thousands and thousands of people to you, whether you fit in it exactly or not. We're actually applying the concepts of you to you. Hey, there's a thought, right? Let's look at you and let's talk about you and let's see how we can fix you, rather than let's look at this book which describes these symptoms and see if you fit into a particular pattern or which pattern you fit into more particularly, and then just follow that algorithm. We need those books, so it's not to downplay, medicine and the science and those kind of things. But sometimes, and oftentimes, there are still gaps, there are still things we don't fully understand. So using that knowledge and then using some of these other concepts and putting them together, that's where the magic can sometimes happen in people, where you take your understanding of science and what technologies and things we may have in order to help somebody with their particular problem, but we're trying to look at the root causes of their problem at the same time and understand where the problems come from, because in conventional medicine, it's not so much of a priority, like you were saying. It's find the diagnosis based on the symptoms, and then it's all algorithmed out, right? I mean, you can go on in a research study or an UpToDate or wherever, you get your information, and you type in the diagnosis and it tells you this is what you should do, and that helps some people, but oftentimes it doesn't help enough. And this is where I realized this early on in my career. That's where I got a little jaded, and I said, I don't know, is this stuff really working or what? And then I found integrative medicine, and that was the missing piece.
Oh, beautiful. Let me ask you a question. When you did your integrative medicine fellowship, did you take a year off of doing gastrointestinal work?
No, man, all the way through. It was like college over again. So I would come home after working all day. Sometimes if it was a long day, I was working in the hospital, I'd come home at 10 o'clock, even, eat a quick dinner and then study for an hour or something like that. And, on the weekends, I would wake up early before the kids would wake up, and I would, study for a couple of 3 hours before we hung out or whatever. So amazing. All the way through 2 years, it's 2 years of training. And it's not like you do some online course or something like that. I mean, it's 2 years of training. There are quizzes and tests, and there's an exam, and then you sit for the board exam, and you do it's a legit program. and it's very time consuming. I mean, there are hours and hours of work, that you do a month.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you for putting in the time, because now you're able to really kind of put together tools. Conventional medicine isn't all bad. I still use it myself, and there's certain things, if somebody is coming in with an acute bleed in the middle of the night, I'm not going to try to, figure out what their hormone levels are or fix their toxin levels. I'm going to stop the bleed. But it's good to have more tools in the toolbox.
One of the things to underscore is that, in our curriculum for integrative medicine, at least 50% of the curriculum is actually conventional science. So, we talk about in every topic, whether you're talking about hormones or you're talking about GI or you're talking about heart disease, there's a review of the basic concepts and principles. And then what's beautiful about this sort of field is that we'll also take some of the other concepts that we don't talk about in traditional training and weave them into how you can use this with this kind of patient. So you kind of get an understanding. And, Dr. Weil says integrative medicine isn't a field on its own. I don't like to necessarily consider it as a field on its own. It's just good medicine. Don't think of it as something necessarily separate. Just think of it as something better.
This episode of the Thrive State podcast is brought to you by the Thrive State Accelerator. The Thrive State Accelerator is actually a home course that I developed using the exact same techniques I work with my celebrity clients, CEOs, and executives on how to get them to the Thrive State. The Thrive State Accelerator teaches you how to master your 7 bioenergetic elements. That's sleep, nutrition, movement, stress and emotional mastery, relationships, our thoughts and mindset, as well as purpose. In this Thrive State Accelerator, you're also going to get a bonus module on optimization. That's how I talk about supplementation, peptides, all the optimization techniques I use with my clients to get them to the Thrive State. Now, for some of you who are just joining us for the first time, you guys might be wondering, what is the Thrive State? Well, the Thrive State is actually the energy, the epigenetic environment we give to ourselves, telling our DNA how to act and how to respond. And if we want optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, if we can master these 7 bioenergetic elements, our ability to have those 3 things that we just said, optimal health, longevity, and peak performance, is at its greatest. And it also prevents you from getting chronic symptoms like brain fog, being overweight, feeling sluggish, acne, pain, all these chronic symptoms, as well as preventing you from getting chronic disease. So getting to that thrive state is really getting to that state to master being that very best version of yourself so you could show up for you, for your family, for your business, everything that's important to you. So go ahead, check it out right now at kienvu.com/accelerator and use coupon code podcast25 for 25% off. Now back to the podcast.
I love the fact, and I've had the pleasure of being able to call him Marvin because we're not only colleagues, we're good friends, and we share a couple of celebrity clients, and it's great to be able to send patients over to you and vice versa. I love the fact that you are able to have different tools from different toolboxes, be able to bring that in. Tools like ancient wisdom that comes from meditation and breath work, but also the latest advances in medicine. We're not saying, advances in medicine aren't good. You integrate them all together. In fact, in your book, you talk about 5 tests that you like to perform for every patient. And I think, many people don't even know about these tests. So can you talk about those 5 tests that you recommend that patients start with?
Yeah, for sure. And one of the reasons why I wrote this book is to help people understand that precision medicine doesn't have to be some sort of concept that's untangible or only for a particular type of people. And I specifically wanted to have a section where I had my top 5 tests because these tests are all affordable. These tests are all things that anybody can do easily. They're all within like a couple $100, and some are even cheaper. And, some of the stuff may even be covered by your insurance. So as far as reasons why some of these made my top 5, that's one of the reasons. And I also want to underscore that when you're looking at somebody's health, it's not just look at one thing. They say, oh, all disease begins in the gut, so just look at the microbiome. All your answers are going to be there. Okay, some answers will be there, but not all the answers are going to be there. So we want to look at different parts of your body, different parts of your inner biology, and get an understanding then of what's going on. So one of the tests, obviously, is the microbiome test. So I think you're missing something if you're not looking at the microbiome, because it's obvious that it's a key part of our immune system and controlling inflammation, and understanding that may help us understand what strategies we can use to kind of help you out. And then one of the other ones is a CT coronary calcium scan. This is very readily available. Insurances cover it. I think I even heard a cardiologist told me that there's, I think, either an area in Texas where they'll give it to you for free because they think that it's so important for you to get this scan done. And that is just basically a quick low-dose CAT scan where you can get a very fast picture of what the calcium deposition is in your coronaries. And, you may think, oh, I may not need that, but, just because you're skinny and you work out doesn't mean that you don't have those calcium deposits in your heart. You can tell us as a radiologist how many times, even when you're not doing these kinds of scans, how many times you see, atherosclerosis on people's scans. And
absolutely. I mean, I see it all the time. Even people that aren't coming in for any problems, you would see them in the aorta, which is the main blood vessel in the body. And you mentioned coronary arteries. Those are the arteries that feed your heart. So very, very important, cheap scan. And like you said, it's a lower dose radiation. So you're not getting a lot of radiation when you're getting that scan. What's test number 3?
Test number 3 is nutritional genetics. So on one hand, we're looking at the microbiome, then we're looking at, actual imaging. And then another thing we want to look at is our DNA. What risks can our DNA have for nutrition? So we want to know, if we don't eat in a particular way, am I at a risk for a deficiency of something? So you can help personalize your diet rather than saying, oh, eat this, eat that, eat this, eat that. these are just kind of generic recommendations, and they may be good recommendations, that may cover a lot of people, but is that necessarily what you need? Is that best for you?
Mhm.
So, looking at your genes as one component of health, and helping you understand how to eat and also how to exercise, because there are some genes that pertain to exercise that come in a nutritional genetics panel as well.
Mhm.
And then one of the things I didn't want people to forget are basic lab tests.
Right.
You can do, and by basically, we mean just getting your blood drawn and going to like Quest or something, for example, and getting
Right.
some of these tests done. These are tests that can be done in many basic labs, and that's why they're called basic, although they may not necessarily be basic as far as simple is concerned, because they may not be part of your regular physical when you go see your doctor.
Mhm.
So they may not be part of your regular routine lab work that you may get when you go see your doctor for your physical exam. They may check your TSH by just as an example, but they might not check your thyroid antibodies.
Mhm.
So they may say you have a normal thyroid function, but meanwhile, here you are with Hashimoto's, right?
Right.
And they may not check. They may check your cholesterol, but they may not check your oxidative LDL, or they may not check your TMAO level,
Mhm.
or other things that are homocysteine level, for example. They may not check some of these things that may give you a risk for heart disease. And if they don't check those things, then you're not going to know either. So those are some of the basic things. And then one of the other fun things that I added as a number 5 test is a body composition scan.
Mm.
And I love the the MRI based scan. It's called an AMRA scan, and it's a rapid MRI, and it basically scans your body for your visceral adipose tissue. So it can measure basically how much fat you have inside, and the internal fat content is a better predictor of risks of like heart disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cancers, and things like that. I think of it as your internal BMI.
Mhm.
We can check your external BMI, and just it's a simple mathematical calculation of height and weight. But there are a lot of people who may be skinny fat. So
Yeah.
they may look skinny, but inside there's a lot of fat. And so we want to know that, because if we say, oh, you're skinny, you're healthy, that's the same person who could just drop dead from a heart attack in a month, too. I've seen that happen before, where people think that they're in general good health, and then all of a sudden they have a massive heart attack and they're in the hospital. So, if they didn't know some of these risk factors, then they wouldn't know what interventions to make. And when you combine all these things together, you can imagine what kind of power you have behind it. You're not just checking your cholesterol and making an assessment over your cardiac risk. You're checking all these other things.
Yeah, amazing. You mentioned the microbiome testing a little bit earlier on. There's so many different tests that are out there in terms of stool testing. There's stuff that you can kind of do at home, and you've got the biome tests and, so many, at home type things. How do you break down stool testing? I mean, is there one that you like to do in the office and that's all they need? Or, how do you make sense of all the stool testing that's going on out there? I know it's a major source of confusion for a lot of patients.
It's definitely a very competitive field too,
Yeah.
because it's evolving very, very fast. My viewpoint, is it's best to look at the whole microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, this is such a complex system, but at the end of the day, it's like an ecosystem, just like any other, like a forest, like Yosemite or something, for example, think of it like that. And if you said, I'm going to try to learn about Yosemite, I'm going to study the buffalo population, and I'm going to tell you what's going on in Yosemite.
Mm-hmm.
Is that enough? How many other populations of different animals and plants and trees are there that you're not taking into consideration? So when you look at some of these stool tests and they give you like a list of like 25 different organisms, is that enough when there are maybe 40 to 100 trillion microbes in your gut? How do you get an idea of what's going on in the microbiome? That's not really a microbiome test, if you really think about it, even though people use it and think of it as that. we want to know what's going on in the ecosystem, we look at the ecosystem. So we do a microbiome test that is a whole genome sequencing test, looking at the whole microbiome. And then the other idea behind a better quality test is to understand what's going on in the microbiome. Like, what are the capabilities of these microbes? Are they doing the things that we expect them to do? Because we're not at this point in the science able to have a test that's going to give you a list of every organism and every function that that organism is performing at this given time. You know, that you can imagine, you know, how complex that report would be. And even if we did have that report, how would anybody really be able to translate that to clinical use? So we're not there yet. It's exciting. We'll see what the future brings. But right now, we can get an idea of what functions the microbes are performing and how well they may be performing them. I think that looking at things from that perspective is more important. There are some tests, just as an example, we'll use butyrate, because butyrate is one that a lot of people may know about. Butyrate is a short chain fatty acid. It's an anti-inflammatory compound. These are things that the microbes make when they digest plant foods and fibers, and they give us some goodness back in the form of reduced inflammation with these short chain fatty acids. So you could do a test and measure your butyrate level in the stool, right? People do that. There's a test where they have this. That butyrate level in the stool is that amount of butyrate in that stool sample at that moment in time. Just like I give an analogy of a diabetic who's getting their blood sugar checked. Mm-hmm. You may go into your doctor's office and get your finger pricked and your blood sugar is 85. Would that be enough information to tell your doctor that your blood sugar control is actually doing very well?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
One moment in time. Right. Exactly.
Right. It's one moment in time. And 2 hours later, it could be 250, you know? So what do most doctors check then? They check your hemoglobin A1C. And that gives you an idea of what your blood sugar control is like over a longer period of time. So same concept now we can use in the microbiome. Yes, we could check your butyrate level today, right now, in this instant, but that may be less accurate of a way of understanding what's going on in the ecosystem in general and over a longer period of time. How is butyrate being produced? So we look at the genes to produce butyrate. How much genetic capacity is there in this microbiome, in this sample, to make butyrate? Because if you don't have the DNA, you're not going to necessarily make the stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a better way of looking at things more globally and understanding these, what we call functional pathways. So I use primarily a functional microbiome analysis.
Oh, beautiful. Now, you know, in talking about all of this stuff here, it seems like you're gathering a lot of data so that we can, you know, really get to the point where people don't necessarily have to lose cellular reserve or get to the point where they've got full-fledged disease, which is the important point of prevention over treatment. Why is prevention so important in your eyes?
Imagine, just in a practical scenario, would you rather figure out how to prevent a heart attack after you've had a heart attack or before you've had a heart attack?
Right.
So many problems can occur after the event has happened that may not have that need to happen, complications or other things that happen as a result of something happening. Yeah. And prevention is so much more powerful because if you can prevent that initial event from even occurring, your overall well-being or overall health, your quality of life may be much better. And I call this well care versus sick care. Yeah. You know, in our health system, we're designed for sick care. You know, if you have chest pain, yes, we want to know. We want to see, are you having cardiac chest pain? Do you need a cardiac cath? But what if you have that high visceral adipose tissue score? What if you have a high coronary calcium score? What if your TMAO level is through the roof? You're not going to check these things. These aren't necessarily part of a traditional algorithm for looking into things. And if you did look into these things and say, hey, look, buddy, you have a moderate to high risk of having a heart attack. You need to do X, Y, or Z before you have a heart attack. I think most people would say that that well care approach is much more beneficial. And the analogy I give is that there's two kinds of doctors. One is a kind that's like a firefighter, who's going to rush into a burning building and save your life if you're stuck in there. We need those doctors. We're always going to need those doctors. You are that kind of doctor, and I am that kind of doctor. We do that medicine too.
Right.
And that's also very fulfilling. People are always going to need that. There's always going to be some problem that somebody needs to be acutely saved from. Then there's another kind of doctor that says, hey, look, why were you anywhere near that burning building, man? You shouldn't even be there. You shouldn't be anywhere near that area. How can we figure out how to keep you from gravitating towards that burning building? And that's the other kind of doctor that we are. We both do that kind of medicine too. And as you can imagine, there's so much more power in that, right? If you save that person from the burning building, you may save their life, but they may have secondary burns. They may have lung, smoke inhalation. They may have other issues like that. It's the same kind of concept. But if that person never ended up near that burning building, none of that even happened.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what a great analogy. I talk about cellular reserve a lot. And, when you've got that underlying process that will eventually lead you to have this chronic event, or this acute event, you're losing some of that cellular reserve. And if you have the event, what you were saying is there's all this residual damage that can sometimes not be reversed, and your body's spending all this additional energy just to try to get back to a baseline that potentially cannot happen. But if you could prevent, and I like the word prevent, but when you're in the process of preventing, that one person from going into that burning building, what can that one person do with their life? They're spending more time with their children. They are more creative. They've got more energy. They are really, a version of themselves that can contribute more to their family, to their businesses, to their community.
Exactly.
The further they're away from that burning building. So it's not just preventing that event, but it's really promoting the very best versions of people that they are out there. So,
and that's what we all want at the end of the day. That's what everybody wants. What, even the Dalai Lama says, the purpose of our lives is to be happy.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
So, and that's why precision medicine is really a game changer in how we define health, or what it means to really be healthy. You put in the investment in time ahead of time, and maybe all of these things afterwards won't happen. Or if they're going to happen, if they're in your destiny, if they're in the stars that this is going to happen, maybe it won't happen so bad. Maybe it'll happen when you're really, really old, as opposed to when you're 50 years old, for example. Yeah. So it is really, at the end of the day, about quality and quantity of life and good years, so that you can do what you want to do, so you can be happy, so that you can play with your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids and do all the business deals that you want to do.
Oh, what a great way to kind of finish this off. I really love your approach. How do people get to know you a little bit better, get to know your clinic a little bit better? And if they want to be a patient, how do they reach out?
Yeah, we have a website, precisionclinic.com, and our email and phone number is right on there. And pretty accessible on Instagram, social media stuff too. So my handle is at Dr. Marvin Singh, and I wrote a book called Rescue Your Health, and the website for that is rescueyourhealth.com. So you can all get the free starter guide there to download and learn about the book and our approach a little bit more.
Super. This is a super awesome book, Rescue Your Health. I mean, in there, you'll see my review of the book too. So I definitely give it a thumbs up. You're going to learn a little bit more about all the advanced latest testing and make it really easy to understand for yourself too. So that's why I love this book. Definitely pick up a copy, rescueyourhealth.com. And with all the training that you've done in conventional medicine, integrative medicine, and probably some spiritual work that you've done as well, what has been your best medicine?
My best medicine is, and this is my advice too, for everybody's best medicine, is don't give up on yourself. Really understand that the best medicine actually lies within you. And there are going to be times when you get into a tough situation, or you feel like you're not making any progress, but don't look at that as a failure or a failure to progress or to accomplish what you want. look at that as a point from which you can learn and understand what's missing. What else can I do? Because there's often something else that you could do. But if we give up on it and we just, say that there's nothing else that's there for me, then we just kind of get stuck in our ways. So my best medicine, and I use this kind of in my own health, and I try to give this advice to all my patients is to believe in yourself, really, because we have so much power within our minds and within our bodies. We don't appreciate it as much. And if you keep on pushing, even if you're pushing just a tiny bit amount, and not as much as you would like, you keep on moving forward, you'll get to where you need to get.
Beautiful. And I'm going to steal what you just said here in a line that I use. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, you are your best medicine. Dr. Marvin Singh, thank you for joining us on the Thrive State podcast today.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if this podcast is bringing a lot of value to you, if you find that your life is just improving with this podcast, that your life is getting to the next level, please consider supporting it. And here's a few ways you can do so. You can do so by liking this video and commenting on this video, and also sharing this video with your friends and family. Another thing you can do is go to ratethispodcast.com/ThriveState. Go ahead and leave us a 5-star review there. It will really, really help this show grow. And this will give me more time so that I could actually give more content to you, just like you got in this episode. And if you haven't already picked up a copy of my book, Thrive State, Your Blueprint for Optimal Health, Longevity, and Peak Performance, you can pick it up now. It became a #1 new release in longevity. Go to thrivestatebook.com. And if you enjoy the book, please consider leaving us a review as well. And the last thing you can do, if you're liking everything here and you want to work more closely with me as well as my team to get you into the Thrive State, go to kienvu.com/accelerator and consider joining the home course, the Thrive State Accelerator. It's really the course that I use. It's the concepts that I use personally when I work with CEOs, celebrities, and my high-profile clients to get them to the Thrive State. Again, the Thrive State Accelerator at kienvu.com/accelerator. And because you're a listener of this podcast, I want you to save 25% by using the coupon code podcast25. I hope we continue to give value to you. And remember always, you are your best medicine.